Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's New Year's Eve, the last day of the year. Usually it's a slow news day on the 31st of December, but 2025 has been anything but usual. It was a year gripped by conflicts, realignments and major shifts in the global order. Even today, the news has not stopped. Today, Bangladesh bid farewell to a political heavyweight. Khaleda Zia, the country's first woman prime minister, was laid to rest. Dhaka came to a halt. Tens of thousands of people turned out. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar was also in Dhaka. And while there, he had some interesting interactions. We'll bring you a full report. Also on the show, after Donald Trump, China is now claiming credit for the India-Pakistan ceasefire, even though China armed Pakistan during the conflict. We'll also break down what Xi Jinping said in his New Year's address. In West Asia, will the Saudi-UAE fallout fracture Yemen? Why is Russia moving nuclear-capable weapons into Belarus? In Iran, the protests are expanding after the rial crashed to a record low. We also look back at Donald Trump's biggest statements that defined this year. And finally, in what was otherwise a gloomy year, the wins of 2025. First, as always, the headlines. Thailand releases 18 Cambodian soldiers held since July. Hundreds of people line the streets of Phnom Penh to welcome them home. This is part of a truce deal that ended weeks of deadly fighting. The border dispute between the Southeast Asian neighbors erupted into clashes several times this year. India successfully conducts user trials of 2 Pralay missiles. The launch took place off the coast of Odisha. The Pralay missile is indigenously developed by the Defence Research and Development Organization, or DRDO. It's a surface-to-surface short-range ballistic missile known for its high precision. Mali and Burkina Faso announced travel restrictions on American nationals. It's a tit-for-tat move after the US included both nations on a no-entry list. Mali and Burkina Faso are led by juntas. Under military rule, both countries have moved away from the West and forged closer ties with Russia. Taiwanese tech giant TSMC starts mass production of its cutting-edge 2-nanometer semiconductor chips. TSMC is the world's largest contract maker of chips, which are used in everything from smartphones to missiles. The Taiwanese firm counts Nvidia and Apple among its clients. And Central Asia, the Sahel region, and Northern Europe experienced their hottest year on record in 2025. Every country in Central Asia broke its annual temperature records. The last 12 months were the hottest ever recorded in Nigeria. Scientists say human-induced climate change has played a big role in causing these extreme heat events. Bangladesh came to a standstill today. A sea of people turned up on the streets of Dhaka. Neighboring leaders flew in, ambassadors and diplomats lined up, all to bid farewell to Khaleda Zia. She was Bangladesh's first woman prime minister, also the leader of the BNP. That's the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. It's the largest political party in the country. Today, Khaleda Zia's funeral was held in Dhaka. Tens of thousands of people turned up to mourn her. The funeral prayers were slated for 2 p.m., but the crowd began assembling by 7 in the morning. Take a look. Security was beefed up across Dhaka. More security officials were deployed on the streets. More barricades were also erected. But even the authorities did not expect such a huge turnout. It's a testament to Khaleda Zia's legacy. It's also proof of the BNP's public support right now. Zia's mortal remains were first taken from the hospital to her residence. From there, they were transported to Bangladesh's parliament. And this is where the funeral prayers were held. Interim ruler Muhammad Yunus was in attendance. So were top leaders from the military and the judiciary. Yunus had declared 3 days of mourning. He had also ordered a state funeral for Khaleda Zia. She was laid to rest beside her husband, that's Zia-ur Rahman, former president of Bangladesh and the founder of the BNP. Zia-ur Rahman's memorial is located just across the parliament, and that is where Khaleda Zia was also buried. Foreign leaders were also in attendance. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar flew to Dhaka. He met Khaleda Zia's son, Tariq Rahman. He also handed over a personal letter from Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, this is very significant because Tariq Rahman is not just Zia's family, he is the heir apparent. Rahman returned to Bangladesh last week, that too after 17 years in exile. If the BNP wins the upcoming election, he will be the Prime Minister, which is why this meeting was significant. Listen to what Jaishankar wrote about it. Expressed confidence that Begum Khaleda Zia's vision and values will guide the development of our partnership. Jaishankar kept it very formal, but Bangladeshi officials revealed more details. For starters, they published a picture of Jaishankar with Bangladesh's foreign minister. Now, we don't know if this was a full-fledged meeting, but clearly there was an interaction here. Again, let me quote. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar expressed optimism to strengthen Bangladesh-India ties following democratic transition in Bangladesh through the upcoming election. And this is a significant statement from Dhaka. It comes amid escalating tensions between the two sides. It also confirms what everyone knew. New Delhi is hoping for a turnaround after the elections. They know that the Yunus regime is a lost cause, so all eyes are on the upcoming election. There are two main contenders in the fray. One is the BNP, the other is the Jamaat-led Islamist coalition. No prizes for guessing who India will be rooting for. You see, the Jamaat has close ties to Pakistan. They had supported Pakistan in the 1971 war. They helped Pakistani soldiers commit genocide on Bangladesh. And looks like those ties are still solid. Pakistan was expected to send their foreign minister to Khaleda Zia's funeral. That's Ishaq Dar. His supposed visit was reported in the Bangladeshi media, but as it turned out, Dar did not visit. Instead, Pakistan sent their parliament speaker. He too had a brief interaction with Minister Jaishankar. Both men were pictured exchanging a handshake. And I know it's just courtesy, but it's also very significant because this was the first India-Pakistan interaction since Operation Sindoor. It's high on symbolism, but not much else. Let's focus on Ishaq Dar's absence instead. Was it a political statement? Is it a sign of distance between Pakistan and the BNP? Because India sent their foreign minister to Dhaka, so did Nepal, Bhutan and Sri Lanka. The Maldives sent their education minister. Only one regional country sent a speaker instead of a minister, and that country is Pakistan. The same Pakistan that talks about creating South Asian blocs. So it's hard to see this as a random decision. Either way, this is a crucial time for Bangladesh. Yes, the BNP will mourn Khaleda Zia, but it must also begin campaigning in earnest. Because this election is make or break for them. They have spent close to 20 years out of power, and if the Jamaat wins the upcoming election, who knows? Maybe there won't be any more elections to fight. There's a new trend in geopolitics, claiming credit for peace without doing the actual work. First, it was US President Donald Trump, and now it is China. Their foreign minister Wang has made a sweeping claim. He says China mediated the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Listen to this.
Following this Chinese approach to settling hotspot issues, we mediate in northern Myanmar, the Iranian nuclear issue, the tensions between Pakistan and India, the issues between Palestine and Israel, and the recent conflict between Cambodia and Thailand. We have stood firm on the right side of history when it comes to central questions about right and wrong, questions that challenge international justice. We have unequivocally opposed hegemonism and power politics, and we have done our best to provide both moral and practical support to countries suffering injustice.
It's a ceasefire no one brokered, but everyone wants credit for. In case you haven't figured it out yet, Wang was talking about Operation Sindoor. Pakistan-backed terrorists killed 26 innocent civilians in Kashmir's Pahalgam this year. In response, India carried out precision strikes and demolished terrorist camps in Pakistan. India also imposed costs on the Pakistani military. All of this happened in the month of May. The conflict lasted 4 days. It ended with a ceasefire when Pakistan made a formal request. Pakistani generals reached out to India's military. That's the DGMO, the Director General of Military Operations. They made contact with India on the 10th of May. They asked for a ceasefire. A phone call was held between the two sides, and at around 3:35 p.m. on the 10th of May, a ceasefire was agreed upon. No third party was involved in this. There was no back-channel diplomacy or external mediation. The India-Pakistan ceasefire was an outcome of direct military talks. India made this clear on day one, and today India reiterated that fact. New Delhi said the ceasefire was a result of bilateral engagement. Then why is China claiming credit? What are they trying to do here? China is trying to rewrite the facts. It is trying to portray itself as a responsible power and a peace broker. But the reality is very different. China was not calming this conflict in May. China was fueling it. In the month of July, a top Indian army officer made a big revelation. He said China gave quote-unquote live inputs to Pakistan during Operation Sindoor. This included real-time surveillance, strategic intelligence, and coordinates for targeted strikes. Basically, China was aiding Pakistan. This is not diplomacy, this is picking a side. They gave military backing to Pakistan against India, and there is evidence to prove that. Photographs like this one have emerged or did emerge during the conflict. These are Chinese missiles that failed to explode. They were found on Indian soil. Pakistan used Chinese weapons against India. They used Chinese missiles, Chinese fighter jets, Chinese drones, and Chinese radar systems. In the last 5 years, more than 80% of Pakistan's weapons have come from China. These are not the actions of a responsible power. China was actively enabling this conflict and using this battleground as a live laboratory. China used this opportunity to test its weapons in a real-world combat situation and against real targets. Even after the conflict, China did not stop. It launched a disinformation campaign. It tried to discredit the Rafale fighter jet that the Indian side used. The idea was to promote Chinese warplanes, specifically the Chinese J-35 fighter jet. Beijing wanted to boost its military sales, so it began circulating fake images online, AI-generated images that claimed to show downed Indian jets. A report submitted to the US Congress in the month of November confirms all of this. So to sum it up, China armed Pakistan during Operation Sindoor. It supplied them weapons, it provided live intelligence, and it tried to discredit India's military strength. That does not sound like the work of a mediator. That's more like the role of an enabler. And it's unfortunate because 2025 was supposed to be a turning point of sorts, with India and China narrowing some of their differences, with high-level diplomatic contact resuming and direct flights taking off. Even Chinese investments made a comeback this year, but Wang Yi's latest comments are a reminder that this relationship is still quite tricky and that the trust gap, the trust deficit, is still deep. In fact, Beijing is now taking offense over Indian cinema too. They're upset about a new movie, a film called Battle of Galwan. It stars Salman Khan, who is one of India's leading actors. And as the name suggests, the film is based on Galwan, the 2020 clash in eastern Ladakh between Indian and Chinese forces. It led to a 4-year-long military standoff between the two countries, India and China. And now there's a Bollywood film coming out. Only the trailer, by the way, has been released so far. And the trailer has angered China. Their state-run mouthpiece has commented. That's the Global Times. They've published a story calling the film, and I'm quoting, distorted and over the top. India has responded sharply. Government officials say the state had no role in the film. They've reminded Beijing that India is a democracy where creative freedom is protected. Of course, we don't expect China to understand that, but I guess there's a clear takeaway for India from this episode. Working with China may be a reality of life that cannot be wished away, but it's important to be clear-sighted about the challenges. Resolution for 2026? Don't let your guard down. Xi Jinping is already setting the tone for the new year. He's delivered his annual New Year address today. The Chinese president delivered some clear messages on a range of issues, starting with Taiwan, of course. Xi Jinping said reunification with Taiwan is unstoppable. This comes after China conducted major drills around the island this week. It was their biggest ever military exercise near the island of Taiwan. They encircled Taiwan and they made some strong statements. On the economy, Xi Jinping claimed success. He said China had met its growth targets, even as numbers show that the slowdown within China continues and youth unemployment remains high. President Xi also took a subtle dig at Japan and highlighted a controversial dam project on the Brahmaputra River. That's something that India remains opposed to. Our next report has more.
2025 was a year of challenges for Xi Jinping. China's economic engine struggled to fire. A trade war with the United States tested Beijing's resolve. And fresh flashpoints emerged across the region. All of this formed the backdrop for Xi Jinping's New Year address. As always, the Chinese president avoided bad news. There were no admissions, no acknowledgement of setbacks. Instead, a familiar tone. Xi's 2026 New Year message was, once again, a confidence pitch. He talked up the economy. The Chinese president said China had met its targets. There was no mention of the slowdown or the domestic discontent it triggered. On Taiwan, President Xi did not hold back. He said, reunification is unstoppable.
We Chinese on both sides of the Taiwan Strait share a bond of blood and kinship. The reunification of our motherland, a trend of the times, is unstoppable.
This speech came just hours after China ended a round of military drills. The exercises were called Justice Mission 2025. They simulated a blockade of Taiwan. Chinese rockets were fired, dozens of aircraft, naval ships, and Coast Guard vessels were deployed. Live fire drills were held across multiple zones around the island. Xi's words were blunt and directed not just at Taiwan, but at the rest of the world. There is no softening of Beijing's claims, no change in position, and no room for compromise on any front. This message was also meant for Japan. During the speech, Xi highlighted the 85th anniversary of China's victory over Japan.
Day by day, the news changes. Is it peace or war?
We solemnly commemorated the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and the World Anti-Fascist War, and established the Taiwan Recovery Day.
Back in September, Beijing had held a large military parade. The venue was Tiananmen Square. The guests included Russian President Vladimir Putin, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, and Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. It was a highly public display, and Xi used this moment to revive wartime memory. He also highlighted a major hydropower dam, a project on the Yarlung Tsangpo River, better known as the Brahmaputra here in India.
Construction of the hydropower project at the lower reaches of the Yarlung-Zangbo River started.
The river flows from Tibet into Arunachal Pradesh, where it becomes the Siang. Further downstream, it forms the Brahmaputra and eventually enters Bangladesh as the Jamuna River. India remains opposed to this dam. It has raised strong concerns about water security, but Xi listed the project as a key milestone and praised it. And finally, the Chinese president ended his speech with a political message. Xi said, "Only a strong Communist Party can make China strong." It was a clear declaration that the Communist Party remains in full control. Xi's speech was not about reflection, it was about projection. With the United States pulling back from the world stage, China sees an opening. Xi Jinping's message made that clear. In 2026, Beijing plans to assert itself even more.
Now the latest on Saudi Arabia versus the UAE. Two allies pitted against each other, fighting what's been called a war within a war. It's a conflict that could birth a new but old nation. I'm talking about Yemen. Yesterday, we told you about the situation there in Yemen. Saudi Arabia bombed a port in southern Yemen. They said the UAE was shipping weapons to this port, so they bombed it. And why was the UAE shipping weapons? Apparently to arm separatists in the south. Riyadh has now released footage of the operation. It shows an airstrike on the port of Mukalla. Take a look at this. The UAE has denied this claim. It says it did not ship any weapons, but the situation has spiraled out of control. To understand why, let me give you a quick primer. Yemen is a war-torn country in West Asia. It is divided into two parts right now. In the north, the Houthis are in charge. They control the capital, Sana'a, and some of the most populous areas. In the south, there are two competing factions, and each faction has a different supporter. One faction is backed by Saudi Arabia, the other is supported by the UAE. The group backed by Saudi Arabia is the globally recognized regime in Yemen, and the one that is backed by the UAE is a group of separatists. Now, recently, these separatists have been on a roll. They have captured virtually all of southern Yemen, and they want to create a new country called South Yemen. Saudi Arabia is not happy with this. They oppose the demand for a separate country, and they accuse the UAE of backing these separatists. So yesterday, the Saudis drew a red line. They asked the UAE to withdraw from Yemen, and they set a 24-hour deadline. Leave Yemen in 24 hours. That's what they said. And the UAE obliged. Here's what they said. In light of recent developments and their potential implications for the safety and effectiveness of counter-terrorism missions, the Ministry of Defense announces the termination of the remaining counter-terrorism personnel in Yemen of its own volition. So the UAE is pulling out its troops. But that alone may not end this conflict. Because look at what happened in Aden yesterday. Aden used to be the capital of South Yemen. Today, it is the seat of the Saudi-backed regime, the de facto capital at the moment. Hundreds of separatists took to the streets yesterday. They are carrying two flags. They were carrying two flags. One, the flag of the UAE, and the other of the erstwhile South Yemen. Take a look.
We stand alongside the Arab coalition and alongside the United Arab Emirates, the loyal ally that has stood with the Southerners since the early days of the war in 2015 against the Houthis.
This is a disgrace to every honorable person and every man who knows that this heroic Arab steadfast southern people has, for more than 30 years, peacefully struggled to reclaim its legitimate right and declare the South Yemen.
And it's not just Aden. Similar rallies have happened across southern Yemen, and everywhere the demand is the same. Break up the existing country, create a South Yemen. So tonight, let's take a closer look at this demand, and more importantly, will it materialize? Will a new country be formed? You see, South Yemen has a very interesting history. In the 1830s, this region was conquered by the British, and fun fact, they actually merged it with British India. So the region of South Yemen was ruled from India, from the Bombay Presidency. Meanwhile, the northern part was ruled by the Ottoman Empire. But by the 1950s and 60s, nationalism began to rise. In 1967, South Yemen overthrew the British. And in 1969, communists captured power. So South Yemen became the only communist country in the Arab world. And it remained so until 1990. 1990 is when the Soviet Union collapsed. South Yemen lost its main supporter. Eventually, the regime here also collapsed. And in the 1990s, South Yemen merged into Yemen, so the country was unified. But this union was never a happy one. Northern Yemen was made up of Shia Muslims, and southern Yemen had more Sunni Muslims. And this fault line continues to divide the country even today. The north is ruled by the Iran-backed Houthis, the south is ruled by Sunni groups, and the most powerful among these Sunni groups are the separatists. Which brings us to the second question. Will a separate country of South Yemen be created? Well, the separatists do have the edge. They now control almost all of southern Yemen. They've also taken over oil facilities and strategic islands. But can they retain all of it? Their main backer, the UAE, is leaving the battlefield, plus global pressure is building. Yesterday, the United States got involved. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to the Saudi and Emirati foreign ministers. He has not revealed a lot about the call, but rest assured, Washington does not want to see its allies fighting. Does not want to see the UAE and Saudi Arabia fighting. And same in the Gulf region. Qatar has offered support to the Saudi-backed regime. They want to preserve Yemen's unity and sovereignty. Bahrain and Kuwait have said the same. So the pressure is mounting on the separatists. They will have to take a call. One option is to resist all the outside pressure and just push on for independence. But that could risk more attacks from Saudi Arabia. Some separatists say Riyadh is amassing troops at the border, some 20,000 fighters ready to enter Yemen. And if that's true, things could get ugly. The second option is to give up the land willingly, basically return to the pre-December status quo. And what these separatists choose could determine the fate of Yemen. Will it be a war within a war or a return to the uneasy status quo? Let's turn to Ukraine now. Forget a ceasefire or a peace deal. Things are escalating as another year of fighting ends. Russia is now deploying lethal missiles to Belarus. They're called the Oreshnik. And Moscow is not hiding this deployment. They're flaunting it. What's so special about this weapon? The Oreshnik is an intermediate-range ballistic missile. It can carry nuclear and conventional warheads. These are fitted with powerful thermal warheads. Russia claims they burn at 4,000 degrees Celsius, meaning it can vaporize even concrete. What makes it even more lethal is the speed. The Oreshnik can travel at up to 12,300 kilometers per hour. That is 10 times the speed of sound. It also has a range of up to 5,000 kilometers. So to sum it up, the Oreshnik is hypersonic and nuclear capable. Russia used it against Ukraine in November last year. Back then, President Vladimir Putin called it unstoppable. He said no defense system could stop the Oreshnik. That's why Belarus wanted it. They claim Poland and Lithuania are threatening their borders, so they asked Putin to deploy these missiles, and Putin obliged. But this was not the only escalation. Russia also fired some 127 drones at Ukraine's Odessa city. Kiev says around 100 drones were shot down, the rest slammed into a residential building. Take a look. I guess this was to be expected because on Monday, Russia made a bombshell allegation. They accused Ukraine of firing drones at Putin's residence, of trying to kill the Russian president. Ukraine had rejected those claims. They said Russia was trying to derail the peace talks. And until yesterday, Moscow had not given any proof. But today they have published a video that shows Russian soldiers standing over a downed drone.
Есть подрыв.
Боевая часть данного беспилотника представляет собой фугасный заряд весом 6
The attempt to slip through our defensive lines and overload our air defenses failed. The crew operated as planned and all targets were destroyed. The drone's objective was a protected facility in the Valdai district of the Novgorod region.
Well, that's hardly a smoking gun. You cannot identify the area or the date from that video. Nonetheless, it is something. It is more than a random allegation. The question is, can Russia convince the rest of the world? Can they convince the world that Ukraine did indeed fire at Putin's residence? At first, US President Donald Trump appeared to believe Russia. He said he was angry at Ukraine's actions. But now the US is backpedaling. Their NATO envoy says things are unclear.
Well, I know that there are reports from the Russian side that this alleged attack at one of the presidential palaces by drone or drones, it is unclear whether it actually happened. You know, Ukraine is receiving drones and missiles every single night into their capital city. And, you know, all they can do is fight back.
I'm sure Western intelligence agencies are on the job. A lot will depend on their assessment, whether they think the attack happened or not. Ukraine's President Zelensky is quietly confident. He says his allies have the capability to verify the truth.
Regarding the attack, our negotiating team connected with the American team went through the details, and we understand that it's a fake. And, of course, our partners can always verify, thanks to their technical capabilities, that it was fake.
Zelensky has some momentum right now, but on the battlefield, not on the battlefield, but on the diplomatic table. He met Donald Trump over the weekend in Miami. After that, both leaders were upbeat. Trump said a peace deal is now closer than ever, so Zelensky is looking to capitalize on that momentum. He has announced two crucial summits. The first one will be organized in Ukraine on Saturday. It will bring together national security advisors from Western countries. The second one will be organized in France. French President Macron will host European leaders next Tuesday. These meetings make Ukraine's goal quite clear. They want to move fast. They want to put pressure on Russia. But Moscow is not in a hurry, it seems. They have an edge on the battlefield. So even if the talks fail, it doesn't matter to them. Russia can secure its goals on the battlefield. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. In the last few weeks, there was genuine hope of a breakthrough. Ukraine's allies thought that peace was indeed possible in 2026. But at this rate, we need a miracle. As 2025 draws to a close, we put the spotlight on the biggest headliner of the year. No prizes for guessing, it is Donald Trump. He returned to the White House this year, and from day one, he dominated the global conversation. From his inauguration promise of a golden age to his claim that America would take over Gaza, from calling his allies weak and decaying to calling Venezuela's leader a narco-terrorist. Each statement landed with force, each one made headlines, and together they defined the opening year of Trump's second term, where policy depended on mood swings, where diplomacy was conducted on Truth Social, and where disruption became the new normal. Here's a report.
The golden age of America begins right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump.
That was how Donald Trump opened his second term in 2025. Not with caution, not with compromise, but with certainty. From that moment on, his presidency was shaped less by policy papers and more by words, sharp, blunt, and often explosive. Trump did not ease into his second term. Rather, he came out swinging. On immigration, he revived his toughest rhetoric, warning the country was being taken advantage of and promising sweeping action. Did you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need 2 on our land. Congratulations, you are now a citizen of the U.S. We're going to end that, because it's ridiculous. The language set the tone, blunt, unsparing, and designed to provoke. He stopped immigration from countries like Afghanistan and Somalia, calling them hellholes. Speaking about Gaza, Trump stunned his allies in February with this claim.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site.
By October, a ceasefire was reached in the war, but the words that preceded it continued to echo. Next came Greenland. Trump revived an idea of acquiring the Arctic island, citing national security, geography, and American interests.
We need Greenland for national protection. They have a very small population. And I don't know, they say Denmark, but Denmark has spent no money. They have no military protection.
The remarks drew swift condemnation from Denmark. Then came Venezuela. Trump branded President Nicolas Maduro a narco-terrorist, warned that his days were numbered, and accused the Venezuelan government of exporting crime and instability to the U.S. The rhetoric raised alarm across Latin America. On trade, the tone was just as confrontational. Trump announced sweeping tariffs, framing them as a necessary correction after years of what he called unfair treatment. But soon after that, he mocked leaders for rushing to make deals with the U.S.
I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing. They are dying to make a deal. Please, please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir.
In 2025, Trump did not spare America's allies either. He claimed the European Union was created to undermine American interests, and even claimed that the continent was decaying and weak.
The European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States.
In the North, he even suggested Canada should become the 51st state. And with Ukraine, he frequently criticized President Zelensky's leadership.
I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States, and your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out.
At home, Trump's confrontations were just as sharp. He lashed out at reporters, dismissing questions and openly insulting journalists during press briefings.
Didn't I just tell you that?
You said that it was
You're
up
the
to
most
Secretary Hicks.
obnoxious reporter in the whole place. Let me just tell you, you are an obnoxious, actually a terrible reporter.
Supporters have praised his bluntness, while critics have warned of an erosion in democratic norms. But throughout it all, one thing has remained constant. Trump's presidency in 2025 was driven by words, and those words were often as powerful as any policy.
For decades, Iran's regime has stared down at many threats. A war with Israel, assassination attempts on top leaders, sanctions to squeeze the economy dry, a nationwide uprising after the killing of Masha Amini, and each time the regime survived. But as 2026 approaches, a new threat is testing Tehran. It's not missiles or more sanctions. It's a plunging rial. Rial is the currency of Iran, as you know. So the question is, Can economics do what conflict couldn't for years? Can it bring down the Iranian regime? And I ask because look at what's happening in the country. Sundays are a busy day for downtown Tehran. The markets are crowded, businesses are busy selling their goods. But last Sunday was different. Shopkeepers brought down the shutters, they poured into the streets and they started protesting. Some chanted, "We want our livelihoods back." Others shouted, "Death to the dictator." And this was not limited to the capital. Soon the protests spread to other parts of Iran. Let me show you on the map. The cities that are highlighted are the cities where people took to the streets in protest. And it's not just shopkeepers or businessmen now. University students have joined in too. So what is this protest really about? At its core, this is about economic hardship. The latest trigger was the Iranian rial. It plunged to a record low. On Monday, it stood at 1.42 million to the US dollar, meaning one US dollar was worth 1.42 million rial. Since then, it has regained, but the impact was immediate and devastating. Traders could not even price their products properly. Think about it for a second. You import your goods or you buy raw materials from abroad. Your trade depends on the value of your currency. Suddenly that currency collapses. Your stock becomes unaffordable overnight. Your rent stays the same, but your income plunges. That's what has happened. So the traders panicked, obviously, and they protested. And while the rial may have been the trigger or the proverbial last straw, the problem is much bigger. Iran has multiple crises playing out at once. There's an energy crisis. Blackouts are rampant. There's a major water crisis. Cities are running out of water. Dams are at near empty levels after one of the worst droughts in decades. Inflation is soaring while salaries remain stagnant. The internet is restricted in the country. And on top of all of this, there is external pressure. There are nuclear tensions. There are sanctions imposed by the West. There's saber rattling by the US and constant threats from Israel. Iran can't seem to catch a breath. And it's not like they've not seen protests before. The latest wave was in 2022, after the killing of Mahsa Amini. She was a 22-year-old woman. She died in the custody of Iran's morality police. Mahsa Amini was arrested for not wearing her headscarf properly. Her death sparked massive nationwide protests. It was met with a forceful response. The regime cracked down hard. More than 500 people were killed. So the point is, Iran has been here before, and yet this protest is different because this one is about daily survival. And when survival becomes political, governments get nervous. So what is the Iranian government doing? They seem to be on the back foot. They say they want to listen to the people. President Masoud Pezeshkian has spoken. He has called for talks with the protesters, and the country's central bank governor has stepped down.
People's concerns and protests regarding livelihood problems must be responded to with full responsibility and dialogue, especially with representatives of guilds, and taking necessary measures focused on increasing people's purchasing power and reforming the economic decision-making process must be placed on the agenda of executive officials.
And then there's Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He's choosing the waiting game. He has not commented on the protests, which is very different from his previous reactions. You see, earlier he used to call protests a sign of foreign influence, but this time he is quiet. Perhaps he knows that a comment at this point will further enrage the protesters. But is this protest big enough to bring down the regime? Not yet. There is no clear leadership, there is no coordination between cities, and the regime still controls the streets. Having said that, they cannot take it lightly because history shows us that governments do not fall when one crisis hits them. Governments fall when everything breaks at once. So the honest answer is this may not bring down the regime yet, but it has done something unprecedented. It has pushed ordinary Iranians to ask questions that the regime has spent decades avoiding. As the world prepares to welcome the new year, travel plans across continents are unraveling. What should have been a busy holiday travel season has turned into a test of patience for millions of people, from snow-blanketed runways in the US to a power failure disrupting railway in Europe to dense fog paralyzing parts of North India. The final days of 2025 have brought a massive disruption. Flights have been delayed, trains have been cancelled, and the roads have become dangerous. For many trying to travel this New Year's Eve, the journey itself has become the biggest challenge. Here's a report.
As the world prepares to close 2025, travel plans have begun to unravel. What was meant to be a busy season of movement has turned into a test of patience. Across continents, journeys have stalled, caught between extreme weather and failing infrastructure. In the U.S., a powerful winter storm called Ezra has swept across the Midwest and Northeast. Heavy snow and fierce winds have grounded aircraft, closed highways, and knocked out power in several states. Airports in cities like Chicago, Detroit, and New York have struggled to keep operations running. Even rail travel ground to a halt. In terminals and stations, luggage piled up, and the only thing moving was time. For passengers already on the move, there was little choice but to wait.
Well, I suppose it's the snow, the blizzard that started yesterday. I got here early, worrying about my train to get to my Amtrak train, and it appears that Amtrak is delayed, at least in the Northeast corridor, pretty much.
The disruption didn't stop at America's borders. Across the Atlantic, Europe was facing its own travel chaos. A power failure inside the Channel Tunnel briefly halted Eurostar services. That halt cut rail links between Britain and Europe. Several trains were cancelled, platforms filled up, and travelers were left searching for alternatives as the busy year-end rush collided with technical failure. In London and Paris, passengers waited for hours as schedules collapsed and updates came slowly.
I mean, all the planning for New Year festivities will be cancelled, and we'll still have to see how and when do we get home and how.
This morning we got an email from Eurostar saying the train was, well, I was actually having technical issues. So we arrived here and then looked at the app and everything was cancelled. But we have plans for tomorrow. It's New Year. We have planned parties and we don't know what to do.
Eurostar later confirmed that services had resumed, but warned of ongoing delays as operations begin to recover. Further east, winter delivered another blow. In parts of northern India, the fog has been so dense that visibility dropped to just a few meters. Flights were delayed or cancelled at major airports, including Delhi, as aircraft struggled to land safely. Rail services slowed to a crawl, with passengers waiting for hours as trains moved cautiously through the haze.
हमारी ट्रेन थी 7:10 पे, अब उसको रीशेड्यूल कर दिया गया 10:50 पे। तो ये इतने कोहरे में जब रीशेड्यूल हुई, लेकिन हमें इन्फॉर्म नहीं किया गया, नहीं तो हम उस टाइम से लेट निकलते। हम तो 6 बजे आए, लेकिन इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं आई।
Authorities warn that conditions could persist for days and have urged travelers to brace for more delays. For those hoping to welcome the new year with loved ones, 2025 is ending not with a celebration, but with waiting. Across terminals, platforms, and stations, the message is the same. The journey ahead may take much longer than planned.
Our next story takes us away from the travel chaos and into how the world welcomes the new year. While many ring in the moment with parties and fireworks, others mark the occasion in ways shaped by tradition and belief. In Spain, for instance, people eat 12 grapes at the stroke of midnight, one for each month of good fortune. In Denmark, old plates are thrown at doorsteps, symbolizing friendship and good luck. In Japan, temple bells ring 108 times to cleanse the spirit and welcome a fresh start. And in Brazil, many dress in white, symbolizing peace, hope, and new beginnings. So different continents, different traditions, all welcoming the new year in their own way. Here's a report.
It's New Year's Eve, and around the world, people are getting ready to celebrate. But here's the thing. Not everyone is celebrating it in the same way. While some are partying, popping champagne, or watching the fireworks, others are doing something far more unusual. In Spain, midnight is a test. You have 12 seconds to eat 12 grapes, one for every chime of the clock. You miss one, and you've cursed an entire month. So people race against time with cheeks bulging. Some choke, others laugh, but everyone tries, because who wants to risk a bad February? In Denmark, it's louder. People save old plates all year just to smash them at friends' doors on New Year's Eve. The more broken crockery you wake up to, the more loved you are said to be. In Japan, it's the opposite. They ring in the new year in a more calm and reflective manner. Buddhist temples in the country ring bell 108 times. Each chime represents a human weakness, greed, anger, or jealousy. People stand in silence, letting go of what weighs them down. They cleanse their way into the new year. In Brazil, the color white takes over the night. Millions dress in white and gather on beaches. At midnight, they run into the waves and jump 7 times, symbolizing one jump for each wish. They even throw flowers into the water as offerings. In the Philippines, it's all about circles, polka dots, round fruits, basically anything that looks like a coin. The shape is believed to attract prosperity for the year ahead. In parts of Ireland, families grab bread and bang it against their walls. The louder the better. It drives out bad spirits and invites good fortune. Romania goes full folklore. People dress as dancing bears and parade through the streets. The bear symbolizes strength and survival, so they roar, they stomp, and they become the animal that endures. And in Chile, some families welcome the new year in cemeteries. They sit beside the graves of loved ones, share food, and narrate stories. Because for them, the new year shouldn't begin without the people who shaped the old ones, even if those people are no longer present. So different countries and different customs. But look a little closer, and all these rituals are really saying the same thing. Whether it's a grape, a wave, a bell, or a piece of bread, people everywhere are reaching for one small moment of hope. A hope that the year ahead will be steadier, kinder, and better than the one that just went by.
"2025 is finally packing its bags, and let's be honest, for a lot of us, this goodbye comes with a sigh of relief. Because this was not an easy year. It had wars, it had inflation, food shortages, political tremors, and climate disasters. It was like living a decade in just 1 year, in 365 days. And for journalists, it was packed with breaking news, headlines that screamed every day. But also buried under those headlines was some good news. Stories that bring a smile to your face, moments that feel like a warm hug in a cold news cycle. So tonight, for our final story of the year, we are turning the spotlight away from the storms to the silver linings. And we will start with our planet. This year, we heard a lot about climate change. The Earth is warming up. Freak weather is becoming the new normal. And yes, all of this is happening. It is cause for worry. But there were also some wins. Remember the ozone layer? It is a natural shield in the Earth's stratosphere. It absorbs most of the sun's harmful radiation. For years, we've been saying that the ozone layer has a hole which is getting bigger. Well, not anymore. This year, the ozone hole over the Antarctic shrank to its smallest size since the 1990s. And the reason for that is human action. A ban on harmful chemicals has led to the shrinking, and that is something to celebrate. Then there are the sea turtles, little creatures that populate our seas. They've been endangered for some time now, but this year they're officially out of that list. Their population has increased by 30%, and this is due to protected nesting sites, also curbs on fishing imposed by many countries. So this year, sea turtles made a comeback. And speaking of comebacks, how can we not talk about dire wolves? They once roamed the Americas, but the last one was seen almost 10,000 years ago. Thanks to science, they're back now. Scientists have revived the age-old dire wolf, or some version of it. They used genetic engineering in grey wolf puppies to achieve this. That's not the only miracle that science achieved in 2025. This year, we also came closer to curing HIV. Almost 41 million people the world over live with HIV. Medical science still has no cure for it, but there have been major breakthroughs, and that could result in a new cure soon. Something that can treat the disease completely. Not just that, scientists are also closing in on a universal cancer vaccine. They have tested it on mice, and it successfully prevented aggressive tumors. So the next step is to test it with humans. Of course, not all heroes wore lab coats or saved species. Some just served tea, like 10-year-old Shravan Singh from Punjab. During India's Operation Sindoor, he walked for kilometers. He served water, lassi, milk and tea to our soldiers. Earlier this year, he was awarded for his fearless service. And he wasn't the only child who made us smile with pride. Meet Bodhana Sivanandan. She too is just 10 years old, and this year she became the youngest ever woman international master in chess. She defeated a grandmaster, the youngest girl ever to do so. And guess what? She took up chess only during the pandemic. Her parents did not even know that she was so good at it. And just when you think the list of miracles is over, there was the India women's blind cricket team. They made history at the first ever Women's T20 World Cup tournament. They lifted the cup. More importantly, they did not lose even a single match in this tournament. I could go on and on. More women-led top-performing companies, the biggest gain since 2021. Heart attack deaths dropped sharply across the globe. The world's biggest camera took the first photo of the universe. Renewable energy overtook coal as the world's largest source of electricity. Archaeologists discovered an entire ancient city in Peru. There are many, many such stories. So yes, 2025 was bleak. It tested humanity, but it also reminded us what humanity is capable of. Good news may not always break the internet, but it does bring a sense of hope. So as we step into 2026, don't just carry the weight of this year, do carry the hope too. This year did not just break the internet, it turned it into memes, from children shouting 6, 7 and parents scratching their heads to the Coldplay kiss cam moment, the sound of the Jet 2 holiday, the debate of 100 men versus 1 gorilla, and Labubus taking over our feeds and closets. Here's a roundup of the top memes of the year. Take a look. That's it on our last show of the year. Wishing you all a very happy new year. But before we end the show, we have some visuals for you. of New Year celebrations in countries across the globe. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Want the facts?
The latest developments?
News that gets straight to the point.
Well, we've got all three just for you. This is Firstpost Live, a brand new show, your window into what really matters.
Don't miss it.